Okay, so let's carry on and sort of try and get these bits of cutlery sorted out. Now, if I just temporarily come out to a fit to screen view, I did give you a warning about it on the previous lesson video. If you can see any banding across here, which I'm certain you can in this area, I'm sort of indicating with the cursor, it's not really there. That's just solely down to video compression. I can guarantee you there's no banding in this image in reality. Anyway, carry on. So what we want to do is to just negate this granularity in these mid-tones here and help with the smoothing out of the actual tones that express the shape and form of the item that we're looking at. Here's that strange granular texture of the white foam core board, and we don't really want to change that, so it's not a question of smoothing the image all over. So we've actually got to invoke or create some smoothing across the entire image and then mask it out completely and then basically brush it back in. Again, it's not difficult, it's mighty tedious, but you know, I mean, it's up to you. You've got to decide, is the image that you shot worth the effort, and is it worth the tedium factor? So, you know, I mean, this is the art of retouching. Is the image worth it? Yes, no. If it is, get on with it and retouch it. And all I'm trying to do is show you the effective ways of retouching an image. Okay, so that's my excuse and I'm bloody sticking to it. Okay, so now we've got our fine cleanup layer, which is basically our final image, if you like. We might as well go and give that some sort of rename, and we'll call it final image. Now what we need to do is we need to duplicate that layer. So of course we can either grab this layer and drag it down to here, or we can just go Command or Control J to jump it to a new layer. And I'm going to rename this new layer Blur, but I'm actually going to call it Blur 1. Yeah, or no, we won't call it Blur 1, we'll call it Blur Fork. Okay, you'll sort of understand what I'm doing as we go on. So how do we apply this blur? Yeah, we don't want to be doing this, which is filter, blur, Gaussian. Yeah, no good. Why is this no good? Gaussian is no good for the job that we're trying to do here, because it spreads out in all directions, and what we are trying to do is actually, to as great a degree as possible, keep the sharp edges of the bright ware exactly where they are. So Gaussian blur is just not going to work. So we'll go ahead and click cancel on that. And one useful way I find of doing this job is to go filter and come down to noise and go to median. Okay, and just a median setting of 3 pixels has done a wonderful job of smoothing that granularity out. If I turn the preview off, you can see the granularity. If I turn the preview on, you don't see the granularity. But the thing to watch is these edges. Just watch this edge here and this edge and this edge. Okay, I turn the previews off, that's where the edges are. I turn them on, the edges are still pretty much where they were in the unblurred, unsmoothed image. If I turn that median down to 2, just by hitting the down arrow key, that might be deemed to work quite well here, but it's not really helping us quite so much in these sort of flat edge areas here. So I'll turn it back up to 3, and you know, we could have retouched this a little bit better, which would help in the job that we're trying to do now. But as I said, I'm doing this for training purposes. I'm not creating a blooming masterpiece. So I'm going to leave that set to 3 and click OK. Now then, this is where the other thing comes. If you remember a few lessons back, I said it's going to be a little bit difficult, and I'd read it because ostensibly originally I was just going to do this the knife, but I did the fork as well, because I did say, if you remember, if you cast your mind back to the lesson, we need to blur them in different directions because they are at different angles in the picture. Now the change I'm going to make now is very, very subtle indeed, and I just need to add just an extra bit of smoothing to the image. And we're going to go filter, and we're going to go blur and select motion blur. Okay, now if I turn the preview off, you can just see this is just that little bit sharper. If I turn it back on, it just adds a little subtle tiny extra bit of smoothing. Notice it's only in a distance of 3 pixels, so we're hardly moving it at all. It's very, very, very subtle. And I'll show you again. We'll turn it off, and then we'll turn it back on, and it is spreading the edges just a little tiny bit. But the critical thing to notice is it's at an angle of -73 degrees. We've got this angle here, and this is the direction that it's doing the smoothing in. And if I change that direction to bolt upright, which is 90 degrees, or pretty much, there we go. Oh God, I'll just type it in, 90. And if I turn the preview off now, you can see it's really blurred those edges, something shocking. Yeah, it's spread this edge up, it's spread this edge down. It's made quite a nice job of blurring in here. And this angle is pretty much the angle we would use for the knife. If I sort of scoot over to the knife and turn the preview off, you can see the knife is moving as I turn the preview on and off, but not as much as the edges on the fork. That's because this knife is running this way. It's virtually straight up and down the image, whereas if I scoot back across to the fork, it's making a lot bigger difference to these edges here. And you've got to sort of say, well, what bits of the underlying image am I actually going to want to blur? And we're going to want to blur this area, and some parts of the handle. And what we basically need to do is make the blur angle run pretty much the same as the actual angle of the subject that we're wanting to blur. So I might actually leave it somewhere around there, 60. Just check it again, preview on and off, and you notice that edge is blurring, but it's not moving. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. And then what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key or the Option key if I was on a Windows machine, and click the mask icon to add a black mask to that area. Well, to that layer, I should say, that blur layer. And then painting with a white brush, and whoa, that brush is a bit big. And what we might do is actually drop the opacity of the brush, but we need to go and check what hardness we're at. We need to be working with quite a hard brush because we're going to be painting up to edges. This is where the tedious bit starts. And basically, if I just come and paint inside that layer, you can see how much smoothing we're actually doing, and you can therefore add this smoothing to every single piece of the image that you want it to be on, and you can dictate where it goes. And like I say, it is a little bit tedious, but you know, anyway, I'm going to carry on with this, and temporarily I'll hand over to the piano. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit. And there we go. So we've just added just that little tiny bit of blur to this image, which just helps thump up the brightness and the smoothness of the surface of the image, and helps to just add the essence of glossiness to it, or enhance the essence of glossiness in the image just on that particular subject. You know, as I said, I'm trying to show you how to do this, folks. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece, but we're working on a very, very difficult image here, to be quite honest with you. I mean, if we were actually photographing this as a job, I would actually photograph it on a medium format camera, and we'd have an awful lot more resolution in the image, which will make things a lot more precise. But don't let me, or let what I've just said stop you from photographing products, because I mean, this image, when it's put on displayed on an iPad, will look absolutely stellar. And if you're trying to make a living, or you want to try and make a living out of photography, these sort of photographs are essential for you to do, so you can sort of cart your iPad around and show potential clients what you can do. And you know, I mean, it's a rough and ready job that we've just done. We could be a bit more precise in here. As I said, the performance in here and in this edge too would have been enhanced if we'd done a little bit more careful retouching. But all I want to do is just show you the essence of how we do the job. But anyway, so that's basically, if we say the fork is now done, yeah, because if I take that blur layer off, you can see this looks very crunchy and yeah, but if I go and activate the layer again, it's got just that bit more finesse to it, but we haven't damaged the sharp edges of the fork. So in a nutshell, we've blurred the entire layer, but we're only showing it in certain little tiny areas over this part of the fork, over these parts of the fork. So now what we need to do is go and do the same thing for the knife, okay? And this actual fork blur image layer is no longer required. Let's just say we've done that, it's finished, it's done and dusted. So basically we might as well merge it with this final image. So we'll go merge layers, and then what we can do is Command or Control J, jump that to a new layer, and we will call this, it could be smart and use the K there, couldn't I, and just call it knife. And we don't want any copy on the end of there. That's just so as we know what we're doing. And what we can now do is go and repeat exactly the same process for adding that blur, which is basically, if you remember, filter, noise, median, 3, click OK, and just let it add it, and then filter, blur, motion blur, 3 again, but this time we're going to have it at an angle of 90. Right, and then we're going to click OK again, and then we're going to hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the mask icon to add a black mask. And then I think what we'll do is we'll go into here, and you'll notice I don't want to smooth the shadow area, because this shadow area contains the granularity of the texture of the board which it is kept on. Well, kept on? What am I talking about? It maintains the texture of the board that the brightware was lying on or resting on or photographed on. God, don't I waffle on something shocking. Okay, so just let's concentrate on this area for a moment, and let's just go and turn that mask off so we can see the effect. And you see, the blur in itself makes a nice job of smoothing that area out. So when you're actually retouching, once you're used to working like this, you're actually retouching with the healing tool, or you're retouching with the clone tool, and all the time you're bearing in mind, what do I need to retouch here, and what will be taken care of when I actually add a little bit of surface blur to it. But that's not surface blur as in the fancy filter surface blur, because I'll never use that. I'll do it this way. But anyway, let's reactivate that mask, and we'll just come in with a white brush, and I think we'll go and rotate this brush, and we'll get back to doing a bit of retouching on here. Okie dokie. And there we go. So if I scoot this out now to a fit to screen view, we've got a generalized retouch there. As you can see, if we go back to our original image, we've full of rubbish, full of junk, full of undesirable elements inside the image, and now I think you'll agree we've made a heck of a difference to it, especially when we view it at a one-to-one view. That's the spoons completely untouched, and the knife and fork look okay, and we've smoothed out all these nice highlights and these shadowy areas. Yes, we can now see we need to go in and retouch even more on these areas here on the knife itself. What am I looking at here? Oh yeah, where we've got little bits of dust which I missed on the original retouch. So you go back in and retouch them again, and we haven't smoothed out in this line here because this is a resolution thing. It's quite hard to see that edge. Maybe we could have lit it a little bit better. This is actually knife handle, that there is knife handle, so we could actually carry on with this retouching and make it even more effective, but as I said to you before, you've got to ask yourself the question, is your image worth it? Because it is a tedious job to do when you're not used to it. When you are used to it, you just take it as read that you're going to have to do it. But when you actually if you've got control over your subject and your lighting, and like this we're doing a sort of a pack shot, product shot, we take extra care when we're actually setting up the shot to try and negate the problem of dust as much as possible, because the more dust you've got, the more retouching you've got to do. But anyway, I hope that's helped or given you some idea into basically how simple retouching is to do. Please note I stress the word simple. I didn't say quick or fast. It's simple, but it's tedious. Okie dokie. See you soon.